Hello, everyone. Welcome to Holiday Decorating with a Purpose. I'm Sheila Budoff with Arlington County's 55 Plus program. This program is being recorded and will be posted on the Arlington County 55 Plus YouTube channel at a later date. And our presenter will be spotlighted so that she is the only one who appears on the recording. So our speaker, Lisa Meade, is coming to you live from Canton, Ohio, at the First Lady's National Historic Site. We were just chatting before we got started and noted that this program would never have happened pre-COVID, before the age of Zoom. So we may be a little tired of Zoom, but on the other hand, it does make some amazing things possible, like this program coming to you live from Canton, Ohio. Lisa Meade is a National Park Ranger at the First Lady's National Historic Site. She's going to be discussing how recent First Ladies use their new roles, use their White House Christmas decorations to showcase their new roles as public stewards of various causes, and how they use the publicity of this tradition to promote those causes. We're going to hold questions to the end. Please feel free to enter your questions in the chat as we go along to hold them, so we'll be able to address them at the end. Okay, thank you all for joining us. I'm going to turn it over now to our speaker, Lisa Meade, National Park Ranger.
Hi, well, thank you for that introduction. That was very nice. So yeah, like she said, I am coming to you from Canton, Ohio at First Lady's National Historic Site. So normally Ohio would probably be a little colder than where you all are in Virginia, but from what I hear, we're in the warmer temperature right now. It's about 40 degrees here. I hear you guys have some winter weather. Not yet here still, but soon probably. But yeah, I am at First Lady's National Historic Site, which is a National Park Service site, which, as you can see on this slide here, that big arrowhead includes us in this club of over 400 National Park Service sites. So that includes some more familiar places, like this one here, you might have seen before, Grand Canyon, one of our most popular. Yellowstone, of course, the first one with the buffalo there. Another familiar picture of Yellowstone. Yosemite, the bears. But you may be surprised to learn that National Park Service is actually made up of more small historic sites than those big natural parks. So the National Park Service includes the Statue of Liberty, the Liberty Bell at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Mount Rushmore, and then our neighbors to the north, James Garfield National Historic Site. And then, of course, us. So this is one of our buildings. This is actually the home of, or the former home of, President William McKinley and his wife, Ida Saxton. It's the building that we do guided tours of. And then we have another building where we talk about the other First Ladies. So as you can see on this slide, there's quite a few of them, about 57. We say about because sometimes, you know, our niece or daughter comes in for the day, does a hosting event and then leaves. So does that count? We don't really know. So we say about, and 57, so you know that's more than presidents. So some presidents have been married more than once, even while in the White House. So we've got quite a lot of women to talk about. So obviously in this program, we're not going to get through all of them. We picked out a few highlights, a few firsts. So if there's someone that you're interested in by the end of this program and you want to ask me about what they did, I can do my best to answer that question. But yeah, I've picked out a few highlights. And so our site is dedicated to preserving and interpreting the legacy of First Ladies of the United States and how their role has evolved and how those expectations have evolved with their role. So the expectation we are focusing on today is this White House decorating. So this image here, I think it says from 2021, so not too old. It's a dining room here. You can see that portrait in the background of Grace Coolidge, who's going to come up in our story again. So over the years, this expectation has gotten quite big. It's evolved from a very little family thing until a full-scale production that starts in January and finishes in January. So there are people where this is their job. They are the White House decorators. They work on this year-round. So it's gotten pretty big. But let's take a step back and let's just think about decorating in general. So think back to a time when you've been to like a friend's house or a family member's house for the first time, and you walk in, you see the color of their couch, the decorations on the wall, the pictures they have, maybe the pattern of the rug. And this information kind of all gets stored in your head as like this catalog of information about this person. Maybe you're walking into this room we see on the left here, a map, and there are a bunch of little thumbtacks. You can see, oh, they've like been a lot of places. This is new information about them. So really, decorations can tell us quite a lot about people. And for first ladies, they very much understood that concept. So as we get close to some of our modern first ladies, we can see how they brought their causes and activism into their decorations. But how did we get that way? Well, we're going to go all the way back to 1896. So this is the very first picture of a Christmas tree in the White House we have, but it's not actually the first tree that was in the White House. To go back to that, we would have to go back to 1889 with the Benjamin Harrison administration. So we had President Benjamin Harrison and his wife, Caroline Harrison, were living in the White House. And Benjamin Harrison actually hated being in the White House. He found it really depressing that it didn't feel like home, and just generally, he didn't like being there. And so Christmas was coming around and the grandkids were going to come visit. And Caroline Harrison said, well, we have to do something. We can't bring them in a depressing house. Let's add stuff to it. They got a tree. And so Christmas had been evolving really since the Civil War to be like the big production that we do today. And so these new traditions are somewhat new. They're really new to American society as we're forming as like a unified culture. So they bring in the tree, they bring in decorations. They get presents not only for their grandkids, but for the entire White House staff. So every person that worked in the White House got a present. And then Benjamin Harrison came in. He's a lot happier now. So he wants to give out presents. He makes a speech. And at the end of his speech, he says, if my influence goes for aught in this busy world, let me hope that my example be followed in every family in the land. So he really saw this as something that could continue throughout the country and really continue in the White House. And as we know, he was right. This tradition does continue after him. Right after him is where we get the Cleveland administration, which is where this picture is from in 1896. So the administration right after him continued it. In 1923, we have the Coolidges who do the Christmas tree lighting. So that's when that becomes a tradition in our country. And even through the Great Depression, through the 1930s, the Roosevelts still bring in the tree. It's a lot simpler. You can see in this picture, if we're comparing it to what we saw last year in 2021, it's really become a lot bigger thing. Yeah, their tree, the Roosevelts, was very simple. Just had some lights, some candles, some tinsel, some garland. But let's jump into the 1960s. So here is when White House Christmases are forming into something we kind of all understand them to be, with the theme and a production and everything that we know now with the White House Christmas. So that really starts with Jackie Kennedy. So she chooses a theme, and that theme is the Nutcracker Suite. So it's based off the ballet. You know, we think of Jackie Kennedy, we think of someone who likes the arts and culture. She's definitely going to ballets, but she's not going alone. She's taking their daughter, little Caroline Kennedy there. She loves the Nutcracker. And of course, the Nutcracker is still a really popular thing to go see during Christmas time. It's Caroline's favorite. And so because they're in the White House, they're away from what is, you know, their home. The White House is just a temporary living space. Jackie brings the Nutcracker to the White House to kind of comfort their daughter around Christmas time. And all the decorations, the ornaments that are decorating the tree there are based on toys and characters from the Nutcracker Suite. So as first ladies are kind of cemented into their role of having a cause they advocate for, those causes make their way into their Christmas decorations. So we're actually going to take a closer look at 4 first ladies. There are only 3 pictured here, but we're going to look at 4. Pat Nixon, Rosalind Carter, Michelle Obama, and Laura Bush, and see how they use their themes to decorate for the holiday in the White House. So let's start with Pat Nixon. So Pat Nixon here kind of repeats the same theme over a few years. So she is holding here one of the ornaments, those balls that have a flower on them. So she actually had all of these made, one for each state with their state flower on it. So if it was Ohio's, like where I am, it had a carnation on it. If you're in Virginia, I had a flowering dogwood, which I just learned today. So each state had their own ornament with their flower on it. And then she had these made by people who were living in a facility for people with severe disabilities. So that really opens up her theme throughout this Christmas season. She wants the White House to be for everyone. So when Pat Nixon moved into the White House, people asked her what she was going to do, what was going to be her project. And she said really clearly that people are my project. So one of the first things she noticed were these White House tours. So you can see one picture right here. And she loved that. She loved bringing people into the White House. She thought of the White House as the people's house. And she noticed a few issues though. One of them is that there were steps into all the entrances in the White House. So if you are a person who was using a wheelchair, you probably were not going to be able to get into the White House for these tours. She also noticed that not everyone who was coming to these tours was able to speak or spoke English. So she brought in some interpreters, some different language interpreters and some sign language interpreters. So that opened up the White House to a lot of people who wouldn't be able to go on these tours before. And she had little models of important artifacts made so that people who are blind or low vision could feel the artifact and kind of see what people are talking about around them. So a lot of accessibility issues about the White House tours were really solved by Pat Nixon. And then she's going to continue that as we get into the holiday season. We have a quote here from her daughter, Tricia Nixon, and it said, "To my mother, Christmas meant giving more than receiving. In the White House, there's a special setting to give back to the whole nation at Christmas time." So we know that Pat Nixon cared a lot about making the White House accessible. And so when it comes time to do these Christmas tours through the White House, she sees a lot of the same issues that she saw with the regular public tours. So one of those issues were these Christmas tours were not at a time that most people could go to them. They happened in the middle of the day, of the weekday. So if you're like you or like myself or the other people I work with, we work in the middle of the day and we wouldn't be able to go to these tours. So she does a special candlelight tour that happens in the evenings and on weekends so that the working people of Washington, D.C. can get to these tours and see the White House all decorated. These tours are extremely popular. There are people lined up beginning at the beginning of the day to try to get into these evening tours. And then they do continue up until 2001. Once September 11th happens, they have to reevaluate letting the public into the White House. And so, but even still, I mean, that's a good 30 years that Pat Nixon had this tradition going. And you can see this quote from her about the candlelight tours. "Because we wanted to share the house with as many people as possible, we started a tradition of candlelight tours through the staterooms." And you can see they turn the lights down low. They give people sometimes battery operated candles, but they're real candles throughout the White House. They have the Marine Corps band playing. Sometimes they bring in a choir to sing Christmas songs. So it's a really immersive Christmas experience. And it, again, is super popular. And then Pat Nixon started another White House Christmas tradition that has continued, the gingerbread house. So Pat Nixon and her daughter requested that the White House chef make one of these while they were in the White House in 1971. And then it's something that is beloved, especially by children who are visiting the White House. They love to see all the candy decorated homes. So this is going to continue. But again, just like White House Christmas decorating, it's going to start off really small and simple, and then it's going to expand. So they started with this really basic A-frame house. It's about 40 pounds. 1977, you can see they still have the A-frame house. You have Amy Carter there standing next to it, but it's gotten quite a bit bigger. And then on the right there, we've jumped to 1995. You can see that's even more extensive. By 1999, we're making real buildings out of gingerbread and cookies and candy. We have here the Washington Monument, Mount Vernon, and then the Jefferson Memorial, all made out of gingerbread. In 2001, it's gotten even more detailed. By 2010, we step away from gingerbread, and now it's into white chocolate. This white chocolate White House weighed 350 pounds. And you can see some other side candy projects they did here. This was based on the White House kitchen garden, but this is all made out of candy. It's funny because the idea of the kitchen garden was to eat healthier, and then they made it out of candy for Christmas. 2019, they did important American monuments all out of candy and gingerbread. So you can see like the Gateway Arch there, the Statue of Liberty, of course, the White House in the middle, Mount Rushmore at the side there. This was 2020. So if you look here, you have the White House in the middle, and then along the sides, you have a police station, gas station, fire station, hospital, grocery store, the postal service. So this one was in 2020, and it was dedicated to frontline workers. So you can see Pat Nixon's idea to make a gingerbread house was a really great one because it lasted all the way up until today. And then at the end of the slides, I have the White House gingerbread house for this year. But now we're going to move to Rosalind Carter, our other First Lady decorating for a cause. So we have her decorations from 1977. So she had all of these decorations were made by people with mental and intellectual disabilities. And that was a really important cause for Rosalind Carter. She actually began advocating for better mental health treatment when she was First Lady of Georgia. So when her husband was governor, and she continued doing that when she became First Lady of the United States. In fact, she had an honorary chair on the President's Commission for Mental Health. She spoke to Congress about her issues. She helped prepare a list of recommendations of how insurance companies and medical practitioners could better help these people. And then when it came time for Christmas, she wanted to highlight that cause again. So that's why they had all of these ornaments made by people with mental disabilities. And then there's also kind of a side little funny story here with their daughter, Amy Carter. So Amy Carter was going to school while her parents were in the White House, while her dad was president and her mom was First Lady. And when she was in grade school, she was telling one of her friends how much she really, really wanted an electric train. So if you have ever told, say, a 9-year-old something and asked them to pass along the message, that message sometimes gets a little muddled. Sometimes it doesn't get clear to the person you want to hear it. And so that's essentially what happened with Amy Carter's message about wanting an electric train. Somehow her other little first grader classmates mixed that message up and told their parents that Amy Carter wants a chainsaw. So chainsaws started arriving at the White House. The message had spread and spread and spread throughout the country, and people just started sending chainsaws for Amy Carter because they heard that's what she wants for Christmas. So they received hundreds of chainsaws. They tried to send most of them back. They did end up keeping a few. And so if you're ever at the Jimmy Carter Presidential Museum and Library, you might notice a chainsaw on display, and now you'll know the story of how they got this chainsaw. She did end up getting the toy train though, so it wasn't all a loss. And then our next First Lady decorating for our cause is Barbara Bush here. So when she became First Lady in January of 1989, one of the first questions the White House staff asked her was, what do you want to do for Christmas? So it had already become this huge thing that you had to start planning for a year in advance. And she was shocked. She's like, you have to be kidding. We're talking about Christmas. It's January. We just got through this. But they're like, you have to decide now because we have to start planning. And so she kind of knew immediately what she wanted to do. She had been a huge advocate for literacy for the whole family, like families reading together, learning together. And so she said, let's do a storybook Christmas. So by this tree she's standing kind of in front of and next to are tiny little storybooks. There are letters, there are characters from popular stories. It's all about reading. And that made a lot of sense for Barbara Bush because she was really into this cause. She advocated for it throughout her time as First Lady. She even found the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy when she was out of the White House. And then when people came to visit the White House, she would wish them a merry and well-read Christmas with your own families. You can see she kept that theme even to how she was greeting people that went into the White House. And this idea of literacy and education has been something that other first ladies had really embraced as well. If we jump ahead to 2016, you can see how Michelle Obama was influenced by Barbara Bush. So these Christmas trees here, there's a yellow one and a green one. The yellow one is all pencils, and then the green one is all green crayons. And see, that is representing her First Lady calls Let Girls Learn. And in the back there, there's kind of like a square full of ornaments. Those are actually like storybooks if you look at them. So it's all about learning literacy, specifically for Michelle Obama, around girls having access to education across the world. And then speaking of Michelle Obama, she is next in line for our First Ladies with a Cause. So again, she's going to use somewhat of the same themes for 2010 and 2011. And it's really all about military families. So this was representing her other cause, joining forces, which is something that she did with, at the time, the Second Lady, Jill Biden. And so if we take a look at one of the trees in the blue room here, this tree was dedicated to military families. And what they did is they had military families make ornaments. So all of the ornaments were made by normally a child that had a parent in the military. And those were sent to the White House and used to decorate that tree in the blue room we just saw. And the blue room tree is always like the main Christmas tree in the White House, where you see like a picture of the Christmas tree arriving to the White House. It's normally this one. But she didn't just stop with the decoration. She had many holiday events surrounding this theme. They did a Toys for Tots drive, and you can see there she's being helped with military personnel. They also did some cookie baking. I heard someone talking about that earlier. So they brought in kids who had parents in the military, and they could make and decorate gingerbread cookies with the White House chef. So hopefully they picked up some good tips that they can take home too. And this decorating was a huge event again. They had 37 Christmas trees throughout the White House, and that required over 10,000 ornaments. And then last in this section for First Ladies decorating for a cause, we have Laura Bush doing a cause that's pretty important to my heart, and that is the national parks. So her theme in 2007 was Holiday in the National Parks. So this tree here, their blue room tree, was decorated with Christmas ornaments, and each ornament represented a National Park Service site. So at the time, there are 391. So they sent these out to the National Park Service sites. Those parks had an artist, and the artist drew on the ornament or painted the ornament to represent their site and sent it back to the White House. So I have a close-up view of some of these ornaments. This is North Cascades, Yellowstone. You can see they picked the most significant image there of Old Faithful. Padre Island National Seashore, where the baby turtles are hatched. Acadia National Park up in Maine. Mesa Verde National Park in the Southwest. And then they had other decorations throughout the White House to represent National Park Service sites. This one here is a Christmas tree made of hundreds of seashells. All of those seashells came from the national seashores in the Park Service. And they're real, they're heavy. That tree weighs about a ton. And of course, this was a very important cause to Laura Bush. She spent a lot of time visiting National Park Service sites, advocating on their behalf. And we have this quote from her that kind of explains why she does all this. It says, "We want everyone to have the opportunity to make memories in our national parks, especially children, with the hope that someday they'll bring their own children. So you see, she has a great understanding of the National Park Service, because that essentially echoes our mission that we're here for everyone who's here now and the next generation to come. So we've gone through our first section here of First Ladies who have decorated for a cause. And you don't have to answer this out loud, but I would like you to think to yourself, if you were decorating for a cause as first spouse in the White House, which one of these do you think you would go with? Pat Nixon's making the White House open for all. Rosalind Carter supporting people with mental health disabilities. You have Barbara Bush in the middle here, encouraging reading. Who we just saw, Laura Bush, supporting the National Park Service. And then last but not least, Michelle Obama, helping military families. Or maybe you would think of your own cause. So one thing all First Ladies have in common is they know they are in the White House temporarily, that their time in there is maybe going to be 4, I guess at best 8 years, at worst somewhere in between. So yeah, they all know that they're going to have a last time decorating in the White House. So I thought it was pretty interesting to look back over what First Ladies did when they know it's their last year in the White House. When I look at these, there are a lot of themes of like nostalgia, not only for their own time, but sometimes times of White House past. There's a lot of patriotism. People are reflecting on how significant it's been to be in the White House. So let's look at a few of these. We have Rosalind Carter here, who went with this theme, an antique toy theme. So she does this in 1978, which is not her last year. But when it comes to her last year, she repeats a theme that she did. So she takes her 1978 theme and used the exact same theme in 1980, this Victorian toy theme. These are interesting because you can see how much style and decorating has changed over the years. This Victorian style, I don't think is very popular now, but it was then. We get a closer look at the 1980 theme. And then if we go to Laura Bush's last year, she went very patriotic, which again is super common when First Ladies are approaching the end of their time in the White House. We have our little explanation here. This year's theme celebrates the patriotic spirit that unites us as Americans. During this hopeful season, we are reminded of the blessings of the freedom that we enjoy and renew our sense of what is important in our lives. And this was in 2008. And it was called A Red, White, and Blue Christmas. So we can see some more images throughout this time. It's also like very traditional, almost looks like what you would see in a movie decorated for Christmas. And then for a tree, she kind of stuck to the same format she did with the National Park Service, except she twisted it a little. Instead of doing National Park Service sites, she sent the ornaments home with all of the congressional representatives. So senators and Congress people all got an ornament, and they were to take it home back to their districts and have an artist from their home state or district design it. And so she got back 369, and that is what she used to decorate the Christmas tree in 2008. And then 2016, Michelle Obama's last year in the White House. You can see we've got pretty nostalgic again, but in a different way. It's almost like childhood Christmas. I imagine if you brought a kid into this room, they would love it. They would love those snowmen. And then she went in the same direction as Laura Bush for the main tree and did a red, white, and blue Christmas tree. And we have another image from 2016. And then most of all, what I've noticed in kind of studying what First Ladies have done over the White House decorating and over holidays, a lot of it kind of stems from what they're doing for their families. I mean, if we think back to the very first Christmas tree, Benjamin and Caroline Harrison bringing it in for their grandkids to make it feel more like home. That is really kind of the starting point for a lot of the traditions we associate, not only with the holidays, but with First Ladies in general. They're just trying to make this place more like home. Of course, that's what Jackie Kennedy was doing when she brought in the Nutcracker theme to make her daughter like it in the White House more. Betty Ford did a similar thing. They had a homemade Christmas. So all of the ornaments that were on the Christmas tree and most of them throughout the White House, she wanted to make with their family because she said that's what we did. That's what we did at home and that's what we're gonna do here. Kind of funnily enough, the homemade Christmas ended up costing significantly more than before her what Jackie Kennedy's cost. So she was striving to save money, but it didn't exactly work out as planned. And of course, we have one of the families that is most famous as being a presidential family, the Roosevelts here standing in front of their Christmas tree. You see it's pretty basic. It's just, you know, the tinsel, the lights, but it's still pretty beautiful. And you see that's what they did when they brought their family into the White House as well, all the grandkids there. And then by popular demand, I have included what is going on this year at the White House. So we have all the decorations that have just been put up. So the current First Lady has chosen We the People as this year's theme for the White House holiday decorations. And we have a quote from her that describes why she went with this theme. As our country gathers for the holidays, traditions may vary, but our shared American values, a belief in the possibility, optimism, and unity endure season after season. And that was a statement from both the president and the First Lady. So you can see the hallway here, everything's super reflective. There are actual mirrors on the tree. So if you're a person walking through the White House, looking at the decorations, you're gonna see yourself, which kind of reflects on We the People theme. And here's their blue room tree, which is the main tree. So you can see lots of decorations. It's all kind of centered around Easter. I'm sorry, nature. And then one of my favorite decorations here on one of the smaller trees in the White House. So here, this tree was called We the Children. So what they did is they sent ornaments. You can see these plastic ornaments out with the sheet that fits inside of them. And they sent them to the year's Teacher of the Year winners. And then those teachers gave them to their students. And the students drew self-portraits. So here on this tree, you have self-portraits of the students of the teachers who won Teacher of the Year. And if you know anything about our current First Lady, she is a teacher. So education is super important to her. And I think that's a cool personal touch. And then this year, throughout the White House, there are 77 Christmas trees. There are 83,615 holiday lights. So every year there is more and more and more. Even from 2010, there were 35, we're up to 77. So things are getting exponentially bigger. And we also have included in this year's decorations is a menorah. So that was recently made and it was constructed from wood from the White House that was renovated during the Truman administration. So other administrations have brought in menorahs. A lot of the time they've been borrowed from museums. They have like a significance in American history that they bring in. But now we have this one that was made out of White House wood and is kind of a part of the permanent collection now. And as promised, here's this year's gingerbread house display. You can see We the People behind it, which is the theme for the decorations, and the White House on the right there. And then Philadelphia's Independence Hall on the left. So that is where the Liberty Bell is in Philadelphia and some other important sites. And that display weighs over 300 pounds. Again, quite intricate. And then I think it's super important to point out that even though the First Lady has a lot of influence over the theme and displays and decorations, there are lots and lots of people that go into making this happen. This year, there are over 170 volunteers. They did shift work, so they work kind of around the clock over Thanksgiving weekend to get things where they are. And so we have a lot of volunteers that come in and make this possible every year. So looking back over the decorations can give us a lot of insight into the lives and values of First Lady. It's sometimes a really intentional message when we think about those decorations for causes. about reading or national parks, or sometimes just a message about celebrating America during their last time in the White House. So whether you're decorating for the holidays or kind of just rearranging your favorite posters, you should consider what the decorations you choose are saying about you. And that is the end. I'll be happy to take any questions, comments.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was wonderful. Really appreciate it. We have questions already. Have in the chat. Thank you for a very interesting holiday themed presentation. Wonderful. I echo that.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
I'll answer a question that I get almost every time I do this. People ask me if they can buy specifically the ornaments from the National Park Service tree, if they're replicas anymore. No. I know they made, each park made 2 and that's it. So if you want them, your best bet is to commission an artist to paint for you.
Well, I'll start off the questioning. I'm wondering, you're out in Canton, Ohio, and the first ladies were all in the White House. How did they decide on a location in Ohio for the First Lady's National Historic Site?
Yeah, great question. So it started with the acquisition of that house I showed you a picture of. So Canton was home to First Lady Ida Saxton McKinley. So she grew up just like a block from where I'm sitting right now. And so that house was going to be demolished. So we had a congressman and a descendant of the family who worked together to save it. Then a nonprofit was started to help fundraise and restore the home. And as they were doing that, they realized that there is nowhere that's just collecting information on First Ladies. There's not a singular site that has like Mary Lincoln's records or her dresses or anything, or her story, whereas like the other story to presidents. And so they just started collecting information. They collected books, papers, those primary sources, and then slowly expanded and led to what we have now. So it was just the house and kind of a coincidence of looking around and realized that you had an idea that no one else was doing. And that's how this place was started. And that was fairly recently. They started saving the house in the 1990s. So our site is still pretty new. We became a part of the National Park Service in the year 2000. So we're only 22 years old.
Wow, that is surprising that it's so recent. That is surprising. Okay, we have another question. How did you get all the information? Did you have to visit the White House and presidential libraries?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So I did visit some presidential libraries virtually. The power of Zoom and the internet. A lot of them have digitized their records, so you can see their letters to the decorator, to the curators, talking about what they want to do. A lot of First Ladies and First Families have written memoirs. So sometimes they have quotes from like the daughters and stuff who are talking about what their mom is doing. So we have that. And then the White House will archive everything from the modern administrations. So I can look back and to see the press release from, Laura Bush talking about holidays in the National Park Service. So a real variety of sources, which honestly means there's probably stories out there that are missing from First Ladies that maybe didn't want their records preserved, or First Families that didn't write about things. So yeah, a variety of sources.
Do you have a favorite First Lady?
Ooh. I rotate through ones that I find more interesting at different times. Right now, I was reading Grace Coolidge's memoir. So she wrote that right after her time in the White House. So, the late 1920s. And it's really before the First Lady memoir is a thing. So she is just like freely expressing her thoughts and stuff. And she's really introspective. So she understands how unusual her life has been and how she's been placed into this situation, or people think they know her, but they don't really know her. So I really like it because it's before First Lady memoirs are more like their brand. It's just the truth of her situation.
Hey, sorry for that. That is a tough question, especially you study so many of them. Have you had any interesting or famous people interviews that you conducted, I guess?
Ooh, not that I have. Although the other day I got a phone call from Lady Bird Johnson's daughter.
Oh,
There was like a fire at either her home or someone's home where they had things stored from her mother. And so
Yeah.
she was asking if we had copies of things. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I think it was Linda Bird Johnson, who married Chuck Robb. They did have their house, I think, almost burned down in Virginia.
Right. Yeah. And so they had lost some things that belonged to her mother. So she was looking for like copies of it. I was like, so
Ah,
with our curator, and she was able to find some of the stuff she was looking for.
oh, how wonderful.
Mhm.
Wow.
And then I have a ton of people who come into the site and sometimes will tell me that they know so-and-so. So there was one woman who it turned out to be she was telling the truth. She had pictures of Rosalind Carter. She was talking through it. So I got to ask her some questions about things I didn't know. Like, I didn't know if her name was Rosalind or Rosalind. And I was like, I want to be saying her name right. And she's like, it's Rosalind, not Rosalind, because she's named after her grandmothers, Rosa and Lynn. I was like, there you go.
oh,
Never knew that.
The more you know.
Oh, it's wonderful to keep learning. That's what we do. Any other questions? These have been wonderful questions.
Mhm.
I just want to say how much I enjoyed the presentation, and I had a couple questions, but you answered them. So that's why I didn't submit a question, but it's fascinating to know how many Christmas trees are in the White House. You know, I don't think people realize how many are really there.
Right, exactly. I couldn't believe how much work this takes. I'm just like, 77 Christmas trees. How do you even like do that? I struggle with one.
77 is a lot. Do they have tours now, or there are no tours?
Yeah, so this year they have restarted the holiday programming, the tours, everything is going again full speed this year. Mhm.
Great.
That's good to know. Mm.
Yeah. So we have another, it's more of a comment, excellent presentation, and hope to visit your park site. And I'm thinking the same thing.
Yeah, that's so
I'd love
nice.
to go there next time I'm in Northern Ohio
You
in
know,
the
the book
summertime.
name is here too, so you can add that to your trip.
I thought it was amazing looking at, you had mentioned Pat Nixon started candlelight tours in the White House, and they gave people real candles. I was like, whoa, probably not today.
God, I hope. You know, the first Christmas tree they had in the White House was lit with real candles.
Yikes.
Like a thing people did.
Because that's what
But
people
it's a
do.
real tree. And so I'm just like, aren't they very flammable?
Yes. Yes.
Different times.
Different times. Okay, I'm just looking for some more questions. Does anyone else have one? And please feel free, you don't have to put it in the chat. If you'd like to just unmute yourself, ask your question, we'd love to hear from you. No, I guess that may be it.
I have one quick question. Do you give guided tours of your site in Ohio? Or is it just like, self-guided type of tours?
So it's both. We have like our museum about the different first ladies is self-guided. You can walk through at your own pace. And then for the Saxton House, it's guided tour only. So yeah, we do guided tours of that. We do some virtually. If you are interested in that, I can show you around the house virtually.
Oh, wow.
Be awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I think that's it in terms of the questions. I don't see any more coming through. I would like to say thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart. This was fabulous, very informative and very interesting, and we really enjoyed it, and very timely for the holidays. So I appreciate, I know you're very, very busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge and expertise with us. We're very grateful. You've enriched our lives. And wishing you and everybody on the call a very, very happy holiday, happy and healthy. Take care and be well. And we should all meet in Canton, Ohio at the First Ladies National Historic Site.
Right.
Wonderful. Thank you. Hope you have a mild winter there.
Yes, you too. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and I'll come back anytime.
Wonderful holiday. Thank you. Thank you.